Hi guys, JT here, and today I'll be bringing you some information on the Humble Bundle RPG Legends Baldur's Gate and Beyond bundle of October 2022. To help you answer the question, should you buy it? If you want to know more about game deals, then feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. It really helps the channel out. So let's get into this. And number 1 we have Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous. One of the more accessible RPGs to newbies and veterans alike. A rift has opened to the abyss, and an all-consuming terror has been unleashed across the land. The different nations of the land have fought fearlessly to drive the enemy back, but to no avail. Now you have the chance to put an end to this, but how you do it is not as clear-cut as it seems. Your efforts will set in motion a chain of events that will leave you and the world forever changed. As mentioned earlier, this game is one of the more accessible RPG titles, as it introduces various systems of the game in a timely manner, without shoving a bag full of information spikes down your throat at once, making you bleed all over your body. Being a more traditional RPG, it is definitely more of a slow burn, but this also gives you plenty of time to take in all of the information around you to make informed decisions for your adventure. You can create your own character that best suit your playstyle, and there are 25 classes, 12 character races, and more than 1,000 spells, feats, and abilities to choose from. The UI in this game is also cleaner and more logical than most peers of its genre. The dark tone of the game really fits into the world and the lore where hope seems like a distant memory. This game further makes itself more accessible by giving you the option to battle in turn-based combat or real time. You may choose to switch between the two different combat options to suit your strategy for particular combat situations. Combat is also faster paced, which is a huge contrast to the slow burn of the adventuring side. Crafting is also deep with the alchemy system. Voice acting is great in this game, which is a rarity when it comes to classic RPGs. Even though the story could have been better, it is decent enough to drive you forward. And yes, you will be making dialogue choices in this game, like any good RPG, and your choices actually matter to the game and the story. Your choices are usually morally ambiguous, going against the idea of good versus evil. You may choose to align with an obvious bad guy just so you can further your own agenda, which could lead to plenty of good. This game is great for newbies and veterans alike with its more accessible features and great pacing. And number 2 we have Neverwinter Nights Complete Adventures. The Complete Adventures not only include the base game of Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition and all of its expansions, but also additional content that you would have otherwise splurged more money on, giving it an insane amount of content. Neverwinter Nights is an action RPG and is based around Dungeons & Dragons Forgotten Realms, which is the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. The base game will see you trying to save the city of Neverwinter from the plague called the Wailing Death. In terms of character creation, you can choose from a flurry of classes, or even play as a multi-class character. If you're new to the RPG-heavy genre and can't be bothered learning all the intricacies of the game like this, you can choose character packages which are pre-made characters. This game doesn't teach you much about its systems, so the pre-made characters are actually helpful. Even though these characters are pre-made, you can still customize them to suit your playstyle. The base story has quite a slow start, but it does get better over time, especially once you reach the expansion packs before going to the DLCs. Being an RPG game, the base game surprisingly focuses more on combat. In fact, some parts of the main campaign feels like it has been padded out with combat, with very little opportunity to actually make dialogue choices that will affect the game. What's even more interesting is that in the base game, you're mainly on your own, as opposed to being in a party of adventurers like most RPG games. You can have one companion, and that's it. However, and this is a big however, when you move on to the expansion packs, you will see a marked improvement, with better and tighter stories, less padding out to make things feel longer, having the opportunity to have multiple companions in your party to go out adventuring together, and most importantly, the return of important RPG decisions that will affect the story. You can also make custom campaigns and play multiplayer. You could even take the role of a dungeon master, playing the game like a classic tabletop Dungeons & Dragons with your friends. With so much content in the Complete Adventures package, it would be crazy for you not to pick this up in this bundle, given that you want to experience a classic RPG. And number 3 we have Baldur's Gate 2 Enhanced Edition. The graphically enhanced version of the original game, but with a few extras, like one extra new character. As per a good RPG, you could create your character, determine his or her appearance, race, stat, and class. Each class has its own strengths and weaknesses, and the classes you pick will greatly change the way you play the game, adding replay value. Each character also has his or her own personal quests to take on, and his or her own ending. You can also import a character from Baldur's Gate 1 Enhanced Edition, if you have one. The story follows from the Sword Coast event from the first game, and your character is captured and tortured by a mysterious, powerful mage. An invasion on the dungeon gave you and your allies the opportunity to escape, but one of your allies falters and is recaptured by the mage, sparking a journey to free your companion and uncover the mysteries of this mage. The story is very intriguing and satisfying with plenty of surprises. It is also recommended that you play Baldur's Gate 1 first, as Baldur's Gate 2 refers back to the first game quite a bit. Exploration and side quests are encouraged to get some of the best items available in the game. In addition, side quests are required to unlock more of the world map and add more to the game's overall narrative. All party members and NPCs have their own personalities, which are fleshed out in full voice acting. Your party can be perceived as good, neutral, or evil by the world, and that is up to choices that you make. The game does not hold your hand, and you're expected to either know what to do or experience the game and learn from your mistakes. Battles are about strategy and planning, and require you to manage your offensive and defensive abilities carefully while planning against enemy movements and attacks. If you like a highly strategic combat experience, then you'll find the combat quite addictive. You can even avoid battle altogether if you're clever with your dialogue choices, giving you the freedom to play the game however you like. You could gain experience points by murdering and completing main and side quests, and you get to spend those points to increase your stats or upgrade your weapons. Micromanagement is a huge thing in this game, giving you the opportunity to manage your party to the detail. Baldur's Gate 2 stands the test of time. The graphics may not be up to today's standards, but if you're not too fussed about graphics and love a good classic RPG, then Baldur's Gate 2 is a must-play. And number 4 we have Baldur's Gate 1 Enhanced Edition. The prequel to Baldur's Gate 2 and the RPG that single-handedly revived the RPG genre for PC gaming back in 1998. The Enhanced Edition of the game not only packs the original game, but also includes a good amount of new content. The main plot begins with bandits mysteriously trying to murder the main character in the midst of an iron shortage. This might be a simple start, but the overall writing, characters, dialogue, and voice acting are all amazing. The Enhanced Edition also includes the Tales of the Sword Coast expansion, which leads into Baldur's Gate 2, mentioned earlier. This edition also adds 3 new and interesting characters into the mix, which you can choose to recruit in your adventure. Your party members aren't just static characters, as each of them have their own personalities and backstories for you to inquire if you so choose. This game is also brutally hard, so do remember to save often and pause during fights, giving you enough time to strategize and think. Even though characters do not permanently die, reviving them isn't just about having them come back to life at checkpoints. You actually have to visit a temple and pay gold to bring them back. In addition, if you take too long to complete an NPC's quest, they might turn on you and try to murder you. And on top of all of that, if your created character dies, it is game over for you, so be sure to save, and save. And be careful every step of the way. If you want to experience an amazing RPG classic, and you can overlook some of the old style graphic, Baldur's Gate 1 is an amazing game to experience, especially the Enhanced Edition. And number 5 we have Planescape Torment Enhanced Edition. An isometric RPG game made in 1997 but enhanced for modern day standards. You play as the Nameless One, a character who has awakened without any memories of who you are, and you go on a journey trying to figure out your mortality and finding yourself. Along the way, you'll meet other allies to join your party, and these allies were and are connected to you in your past lives. Be forewarned though, this game is more of a novel that you're playing through, as its focus is more on dialogue rather than combat. The combat is not the best, but the writing and the story is some of the most interesting writing you will ever find in the game. In fact, many times, if you navigate dialogue choices carefully, you could resolve conflicts and move the plot forward without fighting, which feels a lot like a Fallout game. The world feels very strange and surreal that borders on realistic while also feeling fictional. The characters and the world feel almost real before being clouded by the surreal and the strange. Learning more about the world and its inhabitants is definitely the key feature of this game, with its excellent surroundings waiting to be explored and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. The characters that you meet takes the experience to a whole new level. If you take the time to read what they have to say, you will find very believable yet fantastic characters, further solidifying the main grip of the game, which is its narrative and story. I would recommend this game if you're into playing through one of the greatest stories told in gaming, and if you don't mind reading a ton of dialogue. Just be sure to increase your charisma stat. And number 6 we have Icewind Enhanced Edition. The remake of the year 2000's RPG game Icewind and its expansions Heart of Winter and Trials of the Lure Master. Being a remake, it retains its old-fashioned pen and paper RPG, which is felt throughout the game. The story starts as your 6 adventurers drinking around a table in a tavern in East Haven when they are approached by a mysterious stranger who sends them on a quest. This version of the game is a minor improvement from the complete edition of Icewind Dale from GOG, with some additional content that were cut from the original version of the game. This version of the game also imports a large variety of equipment, classes, and class kits from Baldur's Gate. Some other additions are quality of life improvements like being able to skip dialogue, a loot finder tool, and a zoom function, so you can fit more of the game's background onto your screen. There's also a new cross-platform multiplayer mode which you can use to play with friends on your phones and tablets. Unlike previous games mentioned in this list, there isn't much of a focus on interactive characters and inter-party dialogues, nor plot for your party members. You can't even recruit more members on your journey. You can start with your full 6 characters from the very beginning, creating each one of them or using one of the pre-built teams. The story isn't the strongest suit in this game as well, and this game mainly focuses on combat and killing a lot of things. However, this game also utilizes older rules of Dungeons & Dragons, so you'll take some time to get used to. In addition, you want to quick save before each battle, as when a character falls in battle, you have to track to a priest to get them resurrected, which is always time consuming. Icewind Dale is not for everyone, as it has a very steep learning curve, but if you're willing to learn the systems, you might just enjoy this game. And number 7 we have a 25% off coupon for MythForce, a multiplayer roguelite adventure inspired by 80s cartoons. There are mainly 2 ways to play MythForce. First is by going into dungeons, murdering everything in your path with your friends, or the second by going at it alone in a slow-paced combat that turns into something like Dark Souls, where your attacks and dodges have to be precise, or face certain doom within minutes of spawning. Depending on who you are, you might pick one or the other. Enemies hit really hard in this game, so if you're going at this alone, you need to be extremely careful. Playing a ranged character is safer, but you'll still feel the wrath of your enemies that hit you. Do not be fooled by its cartoony aesthetics and 80s cartoon vibe. Maps are also procedurally generated, with each filled with a handful of enemies, chests, and pots to break open for color-coded loot. In terms of classes, you have access to the classic Dungeons & Dragons classes like a knight, a rogue, a mage, and a ranger, each of their own playstyles. Do expect yourself to die over and over again, as this is a roguelite. Every time you respawn, hopefully you have collected new loot and gained new perks to make you slightly stronger. The thing about this game is that the combat feels slower paced, might be due to the first person view, so by repeating the levels over and over it does feel like a bit of a grind, unlike Hades and Going Under where this isn't a problem, as the combat feels faster. The game is definitely infinitely more fun with a group of friends, as you can technically take on each dungeon by having one of you draw enemy attention while the others murder them or revive a downed ally. MythForce is still in early access, so hopefully the developers could fine-tune their roguelite formula to feel faster paced, or even the single player experience to not feel a bit like first-person Dark Souls, but with the cartoon characters trying to murder you in 3 hits. It's only a 25% off coupon, so you might want to wait till this game is a bit more developed. Who knows, it might be in another bundle next year like what happened to Disciples Liberation. And that's all for this bundle. This bundle is great if you want to experience some hardcore classic RPG with some gems to play through. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.